Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with G.I. Joe and the Transformers. Last week, a new flight-capable solar nuclear power station became the target of both Cobra and the Decepticons. G.I. Joe annihilated Bumblebee after he saved a child, to protect the station, which ended up stolen by Cobra anyway. They'd go on to form an alliance with the Decepticons, until Dr. Mindbender learns the newly self-appointed leader Shockwave intends to jumpstart Cybertron by sacrificing Earth. Issue 3's cover sees the Earth being destroyed by Shockwave's hands, as various heroic and villainous character heads look on in horror. Well, except for Dirge and Omega Supreme, they have excellent poker faces, and I don't know who this bot at the bottom is supposed to be. It could be someone I'm usually more familiar with, just not used to seeing covered in gold. One thing you'll notice about this era of Transformers comics is the many ways coloring choices deviate from the cartoon. Agitating fault lines, drilling into magma pockets beneath the sea floor, melting the polar ice caps, all by use of Power Station Alpha. This then creates quakes, tidal waves, and other disasters until Earth becomes a fireball, and Alpha is further utilized to absorb what is unleashed. We will siphon off this planet's enormous energies! We will literally drain this planet of its life! Then I am certain to win the science fair! Who needs improvement now, Mr. Del Vecchio? This has been a simulation Shockwave has created to demonstrate how he'll use the station to beam the destroyed planet's energy to restore Cybertron. Not only is this beyond what Megatron originally envisioned for Alpha, it'll let Shocky accomplish in days what ages of Decepticon leaders have failed to do. It took the logic and guidance of circuits such as my own. Who else but Shockwave could conceive a plan of such grandeur? None of which have a modesty widget installed, I see. Cobra arrives with Alpha to solidify their alliance, the leaders making nice and complimenting one another, while internally, Serpentor schemes to control the inferior robotic minds of the Decepticons, and Shocky mocks how stupid the fleshlings are for delivering the means of the human race's destruction.
Let him finish.
Wait, I want to see where he's going with that stupid humans thing.
Very interesting.
Dr. Mindbender will stay with the cons as a good faith ambassador and secretly look for any signs of treachery. Likewise, Dirge will accompany Cobra and help them attack the Autobot base to obtain a solar generator needed for some adjustments to Alpha. The base somehow got a nasty vampire infestation. This'll basically be like fumigation. Not having anticipated this, Serpentor plays along. At least competent Mindbender will be able to pull off any needed sabotage. Shocky figures that whether the Autobots severely damage or obliterate their new allies, it'll benefit his plan. So, Cobra planes head for the Ark, save one. For the Baroness there is other business to attend to, a matter that is most critical to the situation at hand. I can't be late for my vaguely Eastern European elocution lesson. I don't want to risk slipping into my Boston accent. Ah, cripes, it's already happening. Thanks to some unspecified credentials, BlackRock seems to start convincing Mainframe and Crankcase of the alien robots at war, and that Bumblebee was one of the good guys. The industrialist laments the bot's death as another unfortunate consequence of militaristic mindsets. Now just wait a minute, BlackRock. You weren't there. That explosion was really cool. Mainframe's point is that he's not convinced B is really dead, despite the many pieces of evidence to the contrary scattered across the lab. It's possible that whatever component gave him intelligence may yet still be intact, and if identified, could yield a means of communication with the Autobots' life force. You've reached Bumblebee's soul. Para español número dos. His body has suffered extreme damage, but we're dealing with an alien life form and a completely foreign technology, if that's even the appropriate term. It's not. The appropriate term is Schnarkelfluven. Within the Ark, the Autobots are holding a funeral for the fallen Optimus Prime, his chassis placed in a rocket to be sent off into the cosmos. Omega Supreme, who literally owes his life to Prime's use of the creation matrix, vows to carry on with his programming as the ultimate line of defense, and wow, this close-up is just downright silly. I mean, the fact that he's the same size as the rest of the bots is one thing, but did the artists intend to make it look like he had a goofy mustache, as if he was supposed to be a French stereotype? or is his go-to defensive move to just stand there while the enemy falls over laughing? Anthony, the kid Beast saved, is going in for surgery, with no guarantees that he'll be just the same afterward. As for the implant, it's going to be sent to a special government team for investigation upon its removal. Meanwhile, General Hawk has arrived in Virginia for an emergency meeting at the Pentagon, though he doesn't seem to know what it's about yet. On the plus side, he can catch up with Senator Larkin, who's in D.C. at the moment as well. That woman stirs something in me, something I haven't felt in years. The urge to yodel the Canadian national anthem at the top of my lungs. Barbara has just left a special session when she's asked by reporters about Power Station Alpha, its loss to Cobra, rumors that safety regulations were ignored to hasten its construction, and independent studies suggesting it presented a legitimate threat of nuclear disaster. The only answer she gives is that she's too busy to talk and gets into her car. Arriving at a French restaurant and giving her driver the rest of the night off, she meets with someone out of view from the reader, their cordiality taken as condescension by the senator. While the conversation is largely one-sided, it's revealed that Larkin and her people knew how dangerous Alpha was, but didn't want that going public. Her acquaintance was supposed to take care of it all, in a nice, easy job that eliminated Alpha without a trace. Now questions are being raised, details are given extra scrutiny, and Babs will be ruined when the truth gets out. It wasn't really a hybrid of solar and nuclear power, but the much more horrific hybrid solar windmill power station! You get it? It's a windmill made of me. A windmeal, if you will. No one gets me. She regrets launching the project in the first place, though having had the best of intentions in bringing her home state more money and new jobs. Her dining partner tells her not to play the martyr, having known the risks involved, even if the Joes were something of a curveball. Sometime later, Larkin is taking a taxi home, as we see a mystery man behind a tree taking notes. Dirge has led Cobra to the location of the Ark, the fleet picked up by Autobot sensors, and Omega Supreme declaring how he'll stand strong against attackers and defend the base with everything he has. And wow, his last close-up looked weird, but this is a whole different breed of what the... Prime's dead, Bumblebee's dead, odd time to get a facelift is all I'm saying. And a pretty lateral one, too. It gets stranger when Omega Supreme says he needs to figure out these newcomers' intentions, so the next move is theirs, but in the next panel he's certain they're not friendly and opens fire. So what happened in the gutter space to make him shoot first? Did he see Dirge among them? Did he recognize the red snake insignia as that of a terrorist organization? Or did he think they were going to try selling him secret base insurance? The Cobra fighters are no match for the gargantuan Guardian, and Serpentor doesn't like wasting his resources against such an overpowering foe. As some other Autobots offer to lend a hand, we go to Hawk's meeting at the Pentagon, where he's told about the lack of failsafes and numerous vulnerabilities of Station Alpha, as well as the evidence that Larkin was among those aware of these problems and never reported them.
It's government approved, so you know it's good for you.
The General insists Barbara isn't like that, and that it doesn't matter how well he knows her, that's his personal life, shut up! Since Alpha is a matter of global significance, the man trailing Babs earlier provides another piece of evidence, a photograph of Senator Larkin's meeting with the Baroness. This was actually shown at the end of the restaurant scene, but I thought this reveal would be much more fun for the show, though you gotta consider that the very known terrorist in a public place wasn't even disguised, so this was pretty sloppy on both their parts to begin with. The battle over the Ark is not going great for the villains, with Serpentor noticing Dirge has yet to get involved in a fight against his sworn enemies of millions of years.
I haven't exactly seen you sending anyone off to meet their manufacturer either.
His people are the ones flying those planes, aren't they? If none of them have been killed so far, that's more Autobot mercy than anything else, isn't it? Serpy was totally just waiting for the right time to strike, which just happens to be right now. So he and his Decepticon friend enter the fray. Anthony Durante came out of surgery just fine, even vocal again, for which his mom is very thankful. At the Decepticon base, there's some work being done on Alpha that tour guide Bombshell is brushing off to Mindbender as some minor alterations. No big deal. And then he starts unconsciously transforming out of control. This is because Dr. McGrath, who was treating Anthony, decided to get a closer look at the implant he removed before sending it off. He pokes and prods the Cerebro shell, and it seems to do nothing in his lab. But it's not until he stops that the Insecticon can regain control of himself. He'll get his circuits looked at just in case, while Mindbender, saying it was probably nothing serious, figures he may have just discovered a weakness that could lead to the defeat of the Decepticons. Or it's the Cybertronian version of the hiccups. There's a lot of trial and error in science. At Fort Lewis, Crankcase and Mainframe have linked a machine to a component from the fallen Autobot scout, and with the turn of a dial, it starts buzzing. You know, like a bee. Bumblebee begins speaking, worried that he can't detect any body parts, and the Joes assure him they'll explain what happened. "You saved a kid, and we shot you to smithereens." "Huh, that was more succinct than I thought it'd be." Hawk has gone to Barbara's hotel to confront her about Cobra, wanting her to look him in the eye and deny the connection. "Can't do it, huh? What's the matter? Serpent got your tongue?" "No, you're just not letting her get a word in edgewise. And do you have something in your eye? Is that why you're winking like that?" He says he trusted and loved her, and when she finally tries to respond with tears in her eyes, he doesn't want to hear it, slamming the door shut as he says he's done with her and her lies.
So now we're judging each other based on things we've done. Real fair. Class act.
What a productive conversation. We return to the Ark where Serpentor has goaded Dirge into charging his weapons for a big attack on Omega, only for the scale-clad tyrant to use a switch on his plane to jam the Decepticon's frequencies. Because that's a thing I guess it can do. This prevents him from firing and causes him to explode. Serpy then uses this as a way of offering friendship to the Autobots, saying the Cobra Nation means them no harm.
That sounds like a lie.
Hawk is trying to drink his problems away when he's called about Bumblebee, leading him to the conclusion that I've been joking about throughout this review, shooting an alien that saved a kid and was going to warn them about threats to Alpha, all because he chose to shoot first and ask questions later. "Send a full force to the location of the Ark that Blackrock supplied. Be prepared to attack on my command. We'll show the Autobots how sorry we are for destroying their friend by shooting the rest of them when they try and save innocent lives." Wait a minute. Actually, he does realize that ordering force is how this whole thing started, and how, if he had held fire, Bumblebee could have warned them about the Decepticons, and possibly even prevented Alpha from being stolen. A rumbling wakes Dr. Mindbender from slumber. Awful nice of the cons to give him a human-sized bed. And he sees Station Alpha being launched. Shockwave's plan officially initiated. He relays this information to Serpentor at the Ark, and is instructed to continue playing ignorant of their intentions. Blaster is willing to overlook Cobra's aggression, since Decepticons are the type to try and destroy Earth, and that takes priority, so he and Serpy agree to fight together. All this is observed and intercepted by G.I. Joe flying overhead, who realize that they'll also need to ally with Cobra to save the world. "But if we survive this, I am not sending them a thank you gift basket." "Okay, maybe I will, but it'll be the cheapest one I can find at Edible Arrangements." Issue 4's cover is pretty neat, with the different factions given their own spots in the fore, middle, and backgrounds, around Station Alpha, and some planes flying away from either an explosion or a really intense sunset. This could have worked for the first issue, and avoided the spoiler of what happens to Bumblebee. The Ark is being rocked by earthquakes from Shockwave's plan for Alpha being unleashed, as the Joes lament having to be friendly with their sworn enemies, Serpentor threatening the Dreadnoks for complaining about being crushed by falling robots, though by the looks of those poses...
They're breakdance fighting.
While Blaster and Omega Supreme quickly exposit the threat that's formed this unlikely alliance. "It has begun, Blaster. Devastating actions have been set in motion by the malevolent forces of the evil Decepticons, age-old adversaries from our home planet Cybertron. I know that you know who they are and where they come from, but I figure the humans who might be overhearing us may need clarification of our whole dynamic." With the station drilling into Earth and causing these quakes, the Joes and Cobra at least agree Alpha needs to be destroyed. And odd little goof here where Serpentor's dialogue bubble has the same corner fringe as used by the Cybertronians' bubbles. But Serpentor's not a robot. That's a different Joe TF crossover. Hint hint, wink wink, click click. Blaster asks them to consider that Alpha may be an intelligent being by now. After all, the cons have made enough alterations to turn it from an energy source to a force of destruction. while reminding the reader of the devastating results.
Millions will perish as great cities are leveled. Great nations will be swept into the seas. The sky will erupt in pillars of flame.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
At the Decepticon base, Mindbender is relaying Alpha's forthcoming targets when he's interrupted by Bombshell and cuts communication. He tries to brush it off as nothing important, but the Insecticon isn't there for a visit. Shockwave wants all the cons to evacuate the planet and has ordered Bombshell to dispose of the Cobra spy. But being the sadistic sort, he intends to amuse himself by using a Cerebro shell to force the human into ripping his own limbs out of their sockets.
Wait, are yours screw joints or ball joints? That makes a big difference.
Because who needs security in this place, Baroness hits him with a blast from a large cannon that reverts him to bug mode, presumably immobile since Mindbender takes him for later dissection. How they have this weapon, it's never explained. She says they have orders to head to Seattle, and explains off-panel the temporary alliance with the Joes. Shocking as this may be, Baroness figures they may be able to glean information about their true enemies, which can be used in the future. At Fort Lewis, Autobot medic Ratchet has arrived to examine Bumblebee's remains. Mainframe apologizes for their attack on the Scout, not knowing the bots even existed, but did get their story from BlackRock, and Bee himself, shocking the Robodoc that his friend is alive.
We all thought he was dead at first, but we kept at it and suddenly something clicked. Specifically the on switch. Once we found it, the thing was really hiding in plain sight.
Mainframe's been working on building Bumblebee a new body, which Ratchet can take over with the appropriate modifications. More guests arrive, Mindbender and Baroness, and the animosity in the air is, to say the least, palpable, especially with Snake Eyes having been the victim of the evil scientist's torturous manipulations previously. Mindbender places the dormant Bombshell on a counter and looks at what Mainframe is busying himself with, the Cerebro shell taken from Anthony, but he can't discern much about it.
It seems the tiny implant is the cause of the transformations the Decepticon Bombshell has been experiencing.
How do you know that? Seeing him spontaneously change forms was a clue, sure, but how did you connect that to his Cerebro shells? Should we assume he just read some data files about this stuff in the gutter space? A surprise demonstration proves Baldy's point, as Mainframe's prodding causes the Bugbot to suddenly turn to robot mode in the lab. While apparently still unconscious, Mainframe fiddles with the implant again, altering his form into something between robot and bug. A modern art installation, maybe?
I won't be able to confirm the extent of the control I have with this implant until I can make him do the chicken dance.
Hawk is taking a stroll through Washington, D.C., no longer able to trust his soldiers' instincts like he used to. Given Barbara's betrayal and his own impulsive orders inadvertently causing this whole disaster, he wonders if it's best to stop caring altogether, rather than live with one's failures. Wouldn't not caring about anyone or anything make you more willing to accept global destruction? Sorry, the General can't lead the Joes into battle today. He's in his room listening to Paramore on repeat. He returns to the Pentagon to be updated on recent events, specifically reiterating what the reader knows, how Alpha is creating multiple different disasters, but specifying how they're meant to exacerbate each other into a world-ending cataclysm. When Hawk confers with the gathered forces at the Ark, Serpentor's idea is to send a small team to plant a few specially placed explosives that can be detonated by a remote. Blaster is still uncertain about possibly killing a living machine, and Hawk doesn't like a sneak attack because it's too snake in the grass.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
One of your most effective and famous Joes is a ninja whose whole deal is stealth and getting the job done without being seen.
He's even called Snake Eyes for crying out loud.
Serby makes a good point that appearances shouldn't matter at a time like this, but he also doesn't care if a relative few innocent people are killed in Alpha's destruction, if it spares the planet. Hawk, of course, wants to ensure no loss of life, so a unanimously agreed upon plan of attack is still just that far off. Meanwhile, Bumblebee's new body is ready and good to go, complete with only necessary alterations. The Scout feels good to be alive, no longer feeling insignificant compared to other bots, and is proud of himself. But with this new look, he makes a request.
From now on, I'd like a name with a little dignity, one that may result in a little more respect. Arm Fall Off Boy.
He wants to henceforth be known as Goldbug, which isn't a bad name as Transformers go, but I don't know about more dignity or respect than Bumblebee. Something like Bee Sting, sure, maybe, but Goldbug feels kinda lateral given his reasoning. But new toy, so moving on.
It means an object or device featured in a cartoon that could easily become a mass-produced toy.
Hawk calls the lab, saying that the leaders have all reached an agreement. Station Alpha likely has limited intelligence, which is why it just got offered its own show on the Daily Wire. So Baroness and Scarlet, approaching in a small vehicle, should go undetected. They'll intercept Alpha on the way to its next pre-programmed target, the San Andreas Fault, and plant explosives that will only be used when it's agreed upon to be absolutely necessary. Goldbug volunteers to be the women's transport, while Mindbender asks what's to stop the Decepticons from attacking to stop them.
That's what Phase 2 is all about.
We've got an elaborate puppet show planned. If the choreography doesn't keep them distracted, our musical number written by Rebecca Sugar certainly will. A combined air fleet of Cobra, G.I. Joe, and Autobots arrive at the location of the Decepticon base, but Ace thinks they might have the wrong address. There's nothing down there but a construction site.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
I know the whole alien robots that change into vehicles thing is new to him, but is he seriously this slow on the uptake? Shockwave launches Starscream and the other Seekers, also Birdbot Laserbeak, but names 5 Decepticons with plain alt modes, yet we see 8 emerging from underground. Maybe the other 3 are just cannon fodder and don't even have names. Anyway, they're backed up by the Constructicons merging into Devastator. The nerds believe they've found a way to control Alpha, combining Bombshell's Cerebro Shells and Mindbender's brainwaves via the amplification of a cybernetic helmet. At that time, Baroness is impatient with Goldbug only going several times the speed limit until they spot Station Alpha flying overhead. Suddenly, it's perfect timing. She's just upset they wouldn't stop at 7-Eleven for snacks and Slurpees. Seriously, lady, how's about you go through a near-total body reconstruction and see how fast you can go 5 minutes after surgery? The aerial bots combine into Superion to take on Devastator as the Giants are given a wide berth in the intergalactic dogfight. The battle is causing the Cons severe losses, like Ramjet going down in flames, but Shockwave remains confident that he'll be victorious. Cybertron will belong to the Decepticons, and the Autobots will be wiped out. The sabotage team have arrived at Station Alpha, with Goldbug no longer finding it the grand engineering feat he originally thought, now that it's been tainted by Decepticon evil.
Look at you, all tarted up with death lasers and murder drills. What Autobot would have you now?
Scarlet and Baroness seem to go unnoticed as they climb up via grapple hooks to plant the bombs, but the redhead finds a new problem. Thanks to an unspecified device she just had on hand, she can detect an intense energy leak that's near critical levels, and could still cause significant loss of life even if diverted from its mission. The women complete their task and radio Hawk about the situation, and he soon tells Mindbender to send the station into orbit until they can fully examine the matter. So Baldy begins to command control of Alpha after putting on the cybernetic helmet.
You're goofy looking.
Not sure why he didn't use the dome he had before, or if this one is supposed to be better because it has some stylized representations for his monocle and his mustache, but here we are. Also, really poor choice to pose his arm like that, artists! He succeeds in converting Alpha to flight mode and sending it into the sky. As Baroness admits, she set the explosive to go off once it reaches orbit. Scarlet is livid that this was done before a formal decision was reached, but the evil lady doesn't care, saying she has a loose end to deal with. I will have my trail mix and Mountain Dew slushy, and no one shall stop me. She decides to take off on her own, and I guess Scarlet doesn't go after her for some reason, especially after that loose end remark, as Alpha explodes, brightly enough that it's seen on the ground by Anthony Durante. Back at the big fight, a focused blast to the neck breaks Devastator into his component bots, and Serpentor is informed of the station's destruction. With nothing left to gain from this truce, he orders his troops to vamoose. Though Alpha's fate was decided without Autobot consent, further questioning if humans can be trusted, Blaster tells the Joes they've done their part and can go. With the Earth safe and the Decepticons in retreat, there's no need for them to further involve themselves in the Transformers struggle.
Unless there's some cool new toys Hasbro wants to sell, and a writer thinks they can churn out another 4-issue story out of the concept.
With that, the Joes head back home, and Mindbender leaves Fort Lewis inconspicuously. A few hours later, Senator Larkin is being escorted to a car where Hawk is waiting. As he wonders why it had to be this way, we get a POV of a targeting reticle, which is really the Baroness observing from a short distance away, as that last loose end is tied up. One of the military police escorts suddenly turns and shoots Larkin dead. We go to the Durante house sometime later, where Anthony's trying to convince his mom of the big kaboom he saw in the sky, but she's having none of it.
How many times have I told you not to exaggerate and go around making up stories? I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times, explosions do not exist. Wait, then why were you having me protest with you at the hybrid power station? Go to your room.
The kid yields, telling her to just forget about it, and they hug. Mom just glad everything is back to normal, even her boy's overactive imagination. Wonder if she'll think differently when the news breaks about Alpha, though. The comic ends on Hawk, crouched at Barbara's grave, rose in hand, mourning her loss, acknowledging her mistakes, but knowing she really was trying to help people. She didn't mean for anyone to get hurt, but the General is in pain, because he loves her and hopes she rests in peace as he puts the flower to his lips. That was G.I. Joe and the Transformers. And while it's not bad, there are a few bumps in the road, some of which I think could have been avoided. I think part of the problem stems from their commitment to following the storylines from each franchise's ongoing. There are small things like how the funeral for Optimus Prime is different from the Transformers title, and some bots being present when they shouldn't. I think it's a little odd and a bit more jarring that they feature several characters in the first and second chapters that are gone in the next, because what was even the point then? Since Megatron, Cobra Commander, and Prime didn't seem to really affect the story all that much, it feels like it would have made sense just not to include them at all. Have some reference captions to how they're dead, or at least thought to be, and have Shockwave, Serpentor, and Blaster in charge from the beginning. As it is, with Megs getting all depressed because he didn't get to take out Optimus before disappearing and apparently deleting himself, there seems like there are a lot of big things going on concurrent with this story with very little explanation, only reactions, and I feel like it kind of detracts from this kind of crossover between two of the biggest properties in the 80s. It feels like they kind of expect you to be reading both series' main titles in conjunction with this one, as if the mini is a tie-in to them. Did we just discover the reverse event comic? Perhaps this integration also affected the pacing to a degree, in at least with having to acknowledge events as they happened outside this adventure, but even beyond that, it could still be a bit mixed. Things have a definite impact on the story that seem to happen off the page, like how quickly the Autobots trusted Cobra because they took out one Seeker, or Dr. Mindbender discovering how Cerebro shells could affect Bombshell with no further investigation, or how a meeting to establish an alliance between mortal enemies like Cobra and the Joes just kind of happened. It was a foregone conclusion with very little focus. Maybe they would have had some room to clarify some of these details if they spent less time repeating story points. Shockwave's little slideshow was one thing, but I don't think we really needed characters announcing what we already know or showing us the same potential devastation after that. I guess recap pages weren't much of a thing back then. It's difficult to say how much time passes for these events. It could be several days or a couple of weeks at most, but that makes it difficult to feel too sorry for Hawk getting his heart broken over a woman he pretty much barely knew. If he fell for a woman that quickly, I think there's more to his mental and emotional states than thinking too much like a soldier. There's also Anthony, getting his head shaved before surgery to remove the Insecticon implant, which gets picked up by some guy that hates his lot in life. If he's significant, I don't know. Maybe the joke title expands on his epic tale of misery. And when we see the lad again, his hair is back like it was at the beginning, yet it couldn't have been more than a day or two. At the average rate of a ½ inch per 30 days, it would take at least 2 months for his hair to regrow like that. Or maybe the hospital was kind enough to give him a youth's toupee, conveniently in his style. Not sure why Bumblebee is considered a master of stealth. Brian made it seem like he could turn invisible or something, but he didn't seem any more unseen than any other Transformer. Still, this isn't all bad. Station Alpha is a great MacGuffin for the Joes to be protecting, Cobra to want for usual global dominance, and the Decepticons to want for their own plans, thus prompting the involvement of the Autobots. The twist that Senator Larkin was part of a cover-up and actually wanted the thing destroyed was good in theory, though in practice, the revelation being willful exposition in a public restaurant with a villain who should be highly recognized wasn't exactly the most subtle means to reveal it. I joked about the oddity of Hawk commanding his team to fire on Bumblebee right after he saved a child, and it did seem rather sudden just to have that dramatic scene. The story at least tries to have the general reflect on his decisions, consider that he acted too hastily, and how it hampered their response to a larger threat down the line. I don't know if this caused any significant change for Hawk in the ongoing title, but the fact that he wanted to hold off on destroying Alpha until conferring with the other leaders is a good indicator of this sort of development. Interactions between Cybertronians and humans are done pretty well, though somewhat limited. Mostly the ones who meet are the ones who need to commander, a liaison or ambassador, and everything is kept mostly professional. The art works well for humans, except where Anthony seems to age a couple of years in between issues, but the Transformers? Not so much if you ask me. The line work and basic designs don't deviate too far from what one would recognize from the G1 cartoon, well, except for a few humorously weird panels of Omega Supreme, but the colors were pretty different for most of them, filled in solid over heads or some limbs that otherwise had darker or other differing accents to them in animation, or even just different color schemes altogether. I get this was how they looked in the comics at the time. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, just not my cup of tea. This wasn't quite the crossover I was expecting, and was made a bit more confusing than it needed to be from being interwoven with two different ongoing story arcs. It's very wordy and sometimes repetitive, but it remains a decent little adventure. A bit of a mixed bag in some areas, but can still be a fun, nostalgic read. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.